So could there be an end in sight to the decades-long bloodshed in Soweto's taxi industry? Well, a ceasefire has been declared between rival taxi associations in Gauteng after months of deadly violence that claimed 59 lives since the start of the year. The Gauteng government and major taxi bodies reached a breakthrough deal in a high-level meeting. For more on this, let's now speak to the Gauteng Transport spokesperson, Lesiba Mpya. Lesiba, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Speak to us about what this ceasefire agreement means and who are the taxi associations involved. Are we solely looking here at Nandue as well as Wata, or does this include the taxi associations in Katlehong as well, including the likes of Zota?
Thank you very much, and good morning to yourselves and the viewers. Eldrin, indeed, it is a positive step moving forward. We've identified 3 hotspots across the province, in Joburg, in the West Rand, in Krugersdorp, as well as in Ekurhuleni, where it affects Greater Germiston Taxi Association, Zonke Taxi Association, Katlehong People's Taxi Association, as well as the Faraday Taxi Association. And yes, indeed, in Joburg, we have identified conflicts within Wata and Nandue, and same as Western, Krudutu and Maruta, where the provincial leadership, both of Santaco and GNTA, came to a roundtable with the MEC and basically declared a ceasefire, because the MEC is in the process of instituting Section 91 of the National Land Transport Act, which empowers her to actually cease operations where there's unrest, there's violence, there's intimidation, where the community basically is feeling unsafe. And I think it's a positive step, because the taxi industry has committed to actually being transparent and accountable. They've committed to actually going to communities with the MEC to have community engagements, but moreover to actually establish conflict resolution mechanisms that actually are going to see, shootings and killings no longer being the norm moving forward.
Yeah, but what does this ceasefire entail? What does it mean?
Well, it basically means that, Eldrin, for the period of March alone, we've seen 30 people perishing. And 59 since the start of last year, the start of January, 183 cases that are reported of murder since April of 2024. So that basically means that we have got to see a downward shift in terms of those statistics that were spiking. Moreover, we're just looking at the fact that there's got to be unity and harmony in the industry, because we've picked up that there are, faceless people who are taking opportunity of conflicts when they arise within the industry. And you'd know that this is a black-owned industry that has been existing for many years. And I think that as government, we've committed our support to our commitment. We've given our commitment to giving it support moving forward. So the ceasefire entails that we no longer want to see any bloodshed of taxi-related violence. What is said is that it no longer only affects taxi operators and drivers. It has now overlapped to communities being hit by stray bullets. Someone just arriving and spraying an AK-47 in a field taxi, and that is just an untenable situation that government can no longer tolerate.
Yeah, and the reason that I ask what this ceasefire entails, Lesiba, is this is not the first time that we've heard something of this nature where there is a ceasefire in the taxi industry. Ishmael Vadi was the MEC for transport in 2013. There were discussions around how to end violence in the taxi industry. That was 2013. Jacob Mamabulo is the former MEC also for Gauteng Roads and Transport. In 2019, there was another summit, and it was said at that summit that violence in the taxi industry will stop. Where are we failing, and could it be law enforcement? Because you speak about faceless people that are taking opportunities when they see this violence unfolding? Who are those faceless people? If they are not brought to book, how will you bring an end to taxi violence? If I ask you this, out of the 183 cases that you speak of since 2024, how many people do you know of that have been arrested?
Yeah, it's look, you are spot on in terms of your sequence, and I think that's quite commendable. Related to that, Eldrin, there's no cases where we are actually looking into people who are appearing in court who have been arrested, who are brought before, prosecution and subsequently sentencing. And I think that. Of course, we must admit that it's a law enforcement issue that has got to be checked up. One of the issues that we need to elevate and that we've picked up is that we need to look into the various law enforcement officials who are also taxi operators. And I think that is where we're also failing, because even our intelligence is getting compromised when we trying to make significant interventions. But we've always been a champion of dialogue. When the industry approaches government and say, we understand that you are instituting this very this regulation that assist you to actually intervene, but can you allow us to talk to our members? Dialogue will always be, will always have an open door policy in terms of dialogue. But what the MEC is unflappable and unflinching on is the fact that she is indeed instituting that Section 91. She has been consulting local authorities. She has met both MMCs of Joburg, MMC for safety as well as MMC for transport. She's engaging affected bodies, including the taxi associations that are implicated. She's consulting them, and actually the Act requires her to write to these associations to say, give me a reason why I should not close the route or close the rank. So they are given that opportunity in terms of the Act, as well as engaging to other affected stakeholders, which includes the communities around those particular areas.
Okay. When can we expect the MEC to make a decision on that, whether those routes or taxi associations will be suspended?
Look, the process also demands gazetting. So it's a process that the MEC has got to do within 21 days. And I think in the next 18 days or so, we should be having a solid, concrete response to that.
Yeah. Isn't that one of the problems, Lesiba, is the period which legislation expects the MEC to act within? We speak here of a ceasefire. When we speak about what's happening in Gaza, as well as between Israel and Palestine, specifically in Gaza, we speak of a ceasefire agreement. It's a war. So it's understandable that you'd use such language. But that's the same language that we're using in the taxi industry. But the legislation doesn't empower the MEC to have the agility to quickly act within the industry. 59 people killed since the start of the year. Surely you must act urgently. You can't wait for 21 days.
Well, Eldrin, it's prescriptive in law. I mean,
I totally understand that it's prescriptive in law. Yeah. But what my question is, isn't that one of the problems that we have? And as we know that legislation is not cast in stone, we make proposals and we say that because of the nature of the violence that we're experiencing in the taxi industry, maybe this legislation needs to be amended to empower the MEC to act as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I was about to say that the late Khabisi Musonkutu used to, unilaterally, immediately, as in now, move into closing of ranks, and that was under the Danaway legislation, which was called the GPPRTA, the Gauteng Public Passenger Transport Act also. So it was done away, and the current act is actually an amended act, which is a national piece of legislation. So processes of consultation were effected into the new legislation, and I think the MEC would have wanted to do this when the MEC went to Soweto she had an intention of doing it in, the following day. However, with consultation to the legislation, we realized that there's got to be processes of consultation, including putting in place alternative transport, including making sure that the alternative transport is going to be protected by law enforcement. So there are regulatory preparations that we've got to do, and unfortunately, we can't cut any corners.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Lesiba Mpya is the spokesperson for the Department of Transport in Gauteng.